Welcome to episode 217, Stop Waiting for Permission and Take Initiative with Paola Ucelo. Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. Today, I am joined by Paola Ucelo, who I've had the recent pleasure of meeting through one of my really great friends and brother, Brandon Collinsworth. You guys know him, been on the podcast multiple times. And last week, we had a get-together virtually, and we downloaded and shared each other's stories and talked about, our journeys. And her energy was beautiful. The way that she crafts things in her mind was amazing. And I love what she stands for, what she's doing with women all over the world, empowering them to step into their personal power and have more fulfillment and impact in their lives. And also, she is the host of a podcast called Passages. I will let her talk about it, but it's like super revolutionary, to use one of her favorite words. And I love the concept of it because it really strips away titles and allows for information to be shared in a raw, truthful, organic, and vulnerable way. So without further ado, the artist herself, Paola, welcome to the show.
Hi. Hello, James. Thank you so much. It's always so beautiful to get to, witness a reflection of the work. So
Yes.
Thank you for that. I'm super grateful to be here.
Of course. Welcome. So I want to get back to, we used to do this many sessions ago, and then I kind of just fell off with it, but I want to bring it back with you, and we're going to try some rapid fire questions here.
All right.
So these are designed to think about them very quickly, give as simple as an answer as possible, and it helps the audience kind of get to know you in a hurry.
Cool.
So first question, where were you born and raised?
Guatemala City.
Okay. Philosophy that you live by?
The answer is always love.
What is your definition of failure?
To quit.
What do you want to see more of in this world?
People living their life to the fullest.
What is a game-changing book that you've read recently or in the past?
The Activist Tao Te Ching by Martin Williams, or William Martin.
Okay. What is a solid piece of advice that you have received recently or in the past that has served you well?
Oh, quickly. Like sitting with it. That you can only fail if.
Sorry, you cut out there. You can only fail of what?
You can only fail if you choose not to grow.
Love that. And last one, what did you have to give up or sacrifice in order to get to where you are today? I'm sure there's many. Yeah, I'm sure there's many things, right?
But I think what's like the first thing that comes to mind is the need to please everyone else.
Yeah, that hardwired tendency.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for those beautiful answers. Catch us up on how you got into this work that you're doing, and then finish it off with telling us about how cool your podcast is and how the idea kind of came about.
Yeah. There is this how I came to be where I am right now and doing the work that I do. I just recently got this opportunity to get to share from my heart, like literally the beginning of it all. So I'll start from a very, very early beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll weave it through. But when it comes to my name, my name was given to me by my father. And when my mom was in labor, my dad took a nap. And in this nap, he had a dream where he was reading a book. And when he closed the book, it said written by Paola Ucelo.
Mm-hmm.
And so he woke up from his nap. I was supposed to be named Flor de Maria, flower of Mary. And he was like, no, her name has to be Paola, you know? And so I share this because I feel like from that moment, my entire life has really been orchestrated to give me lessons, to present to me opportunities and aspects of my being and aspects of my life to support me in the writing of this book, not just physically, but also in a way of how is it that I'm going to write the story of my life. And I grew up in Guatemala City, born and raised Catholic, complete, all girls school, private all girls school, like as as religious as it could be. And although I do feel that, religion is a really beautiful thing to have those beliefs. For me personally, from a really young age, I always had a lot of questions and felt like I couldn't ask them, that it was not okay for me to ask any questions, that it wasn't okay for me to go the opposite way of everything that I was being taught and told. And the stage, the way of being in Guatemala was started to be a little bit dangerous for myself and for my family. So we moved to the US. And when I got to the US, it was like completely culture shock. Completely culture shock. I didn't know English. I didn't know, like, I had never been in a school with just so many different nationalities, and it was just so diverse, and there was boys in class, like all of these things, and it was such a huge culture shock for me. And I feel that moving to the US really began to catalyze this way within myself of actually getting to see, like, whoa, okay, like the world can look differently than the way that I was taught. Although it was a little bit intimidating, it was also very much welcoming for me. And so I went through this whole process, and really going through this way of living my life of, like, okay, like I'm going to try to fit the status quo. I'm going to do what is told. I'm going to try and make myself fit into this thing and not question much of it. And I and I'm sure, a lot of people can relate to this, but I did this up until I could no longer do it. Right. Until I got to this point in my life, I remember I was so deeply disconnected from myself, disconnected from my body. Side note, I'm a ninja, right? Like I grew up as a martial artist, and it was such a beautiful thing to grow up with, as far as like the discipline and the way that it taught me to be a student, and the connection to spirit and to energy and to my body that it brought to me. And getting to this point in my life in which I got completely disconnected from martial arts. I was no longer moving my body. I was no longer um, really accessing that little girl inside of myself that was curious about the world, that was curious about other people, that was excited about trying new things, and saw myself in a space in life where I was like, man, like this sucks. Is this everything? I went on and I married my high school sweetheart, and I got this incredible job in Malibu. I got the college degree. I had the beautiful office with a view to the ocean. And I would just look out to it being so sad.
Mm.
And I ended up I had this breakdown moment in my life. And from it, I got the opportunity to go to this personal development seminar. And I had this question asked to me. And I mean, granted, at the time, I had never, it really shocks me until this day that nobody had ever asked me this question. And it's so simple. It's so simple. But I was asked the question, when was the last time you felt fully empowered? And I looked back at my life and I saw all of the ways that I disempowered my own natural way of being. I saw the way that I felt empowered in my emotions, yet I shut them down. I felt empowered in like the way that I so passionately loved and yet shut it down. I felt empowered in connection to my body and yet I shut that down too. And so to be able to witness that within myself and be asked that question, it really began to bring everything back up to me. Mm-hmm. And so I started training again. I started sharing that with other people at a park near my house, like free classes. I was like, all right, this is it. Like I'm going to empower people. We're going to do martial arts at the park and we're going to meditate. We're going to breathe. Like I'm going to support myself and other people in feeling empowered in their bodies and the ability to feel strength within themselves, And so that has clearly evolved over the years. I'm still always a martial artist, but now to really get to this point in which I'm truly in a space of wanting to support people in living their life fully, because that's what empowerment really means to me. To be empowered is to really be able to face fear and doubt and uncertainty and still have the ability to live my life fully with an open heart. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like all of these things in my life have really supported me and in writing this book of empowerment and living a life where I feel like I can actually speak up about myself, live my life the way that I desire to live it, and not feel like I need to constrict myself from the immense love and passion that flows through me. It's ultimately life, right? So
how long ago was that seminar?
That was 6 years ago.
Got it. So this has been a 6-year journey. Oh, not just 6 years, been a whole life, but that was that was a pivot point. That was like a catalyst to really dive in and reflect on what were the staples in your life that allowed you to feel centered or to feel grounded or to feel empowered that can move you forward in the way that felt most in alignment.
Exactly.
And a couple of things that I picked up there were meditation. So I would categorize that in like a spiritual / mindset realm, mm-hmm. and then the physicality, which is like the movement, mm-hmm. The martial arts, the challenging of the physical body itself. Mm-hmm. How, because I'm big on physical too, like boxing or just certain types of training, and then there's a lot of research that points out to the more dynamic movements are, the more dynamic thoughts are, and the mind-body connection is a really beautiful thing. In that moment where you realize, like, one of the moments in your life where you felt most fulfilled or most empowered was when you were doing martial arts or at least training your body. Like, what did you think about that when you found, like, when you identified that? Was it like, okay, fitness needs to be a part of my life, and how often does it need to be in a part of my life? What was your thought process in that moment when you identified that?
Yeah, my father actually shared this. It's one of his quote. My just side note, my dad has been my martial arts master my whole life. So
he's a ninja too.
He's a ninja. He's a master.
It's a home full of ninjas.
Yeah. And so, he has this quote or saying that is the biggest achievement is the one of the soul over the agony of the mind. Like the soul's achievement over the agony of our minds. And I truly believe that the bridge to that is our bodies. Right? Because like our heart and our spirit, I believe in within myself, right? It's just like constantly wanting to prevail, to prosper itself, to live. right? To like not be shut down or be suppressed. And then the mind, it's kind of like that older, like the oldest sibling that's just kind of like, no, we can't do that. Like we did that once before and it didn't work out well and all this stuff. And then the body's kind of like the middle child that's like, I don't know, like what do we do? And so in that moment when I discovered that, it was so profound for me, because it truly was a bridge to allow for my spirit to prevail, right? So for example, there's the way that it happened for me is that I went out to the park, right? I literally went out to the park. I had not moved my body for a really long time. And I looked like a crazy person. I was like kicking and punching to the air. And when I was doing all of this and I was breathing, like suddenly I just like dropped to my knees and cried so much. Like there was all of these stagnant emotions in my body that the movement allowed for it to express, to be released, to be moved. And in that moment, and I'm constantly reminding myself through the work that I do and just my own makeup as a human being, is that it is important for me to move my body, not because I need to move my body to be fit, not because I need my body, not because I get to feel completely vital within myself, but because through movement of my body, through this physicality, it really allows me to be a clear vessel, to actually get to integrate ways of being that are going to be supportive for myself and for my life. Right. So if I'm going through my life and I'm not really moving my body, I'm not creating space in my body. It's just a perpetuation of stuff that maybe isn't serving for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I feel the same way. And the metaphors that I like to use, or the visuals, if you will, are like, one is an antenna, and there's certain things that you do that sharpen the reception ability of that antenna. If you have a bent antenna or an old, outdated antenna, it's not going to have the receptive power to get calls or get, the channels that you're looking for. Or I look at it as like pipes. When pipes are backed up and there's a lot of sewage there, when it's clogged, it's drained, it just feels like heavy and things aren't flowing. But when you start moving the body, when you start exercising, and it cleans it. It's like now a clear, like you said, vessel to house wisdom to come through, for you to channel things, right? And so I definitely would 100% agree with that. And I mentioned boxing earlier and how I typically stay fit. It's yes, it is for physical strength and obviously be able to defend myself, but more so, it's about the mental. It's about how good I feel mentally when I work out. So I'm getting a 2-for-1, basically, is how I look at it. I get the body to be stronger and healthier, but more importantly, I get the mind to be stronger and clearer. And operating from there is how I'm able to serve at such a high level. So that's why I picked up on it in your story. Thank you for that feedback and that story.
Yeah. And one thing I'll add to that is this, like I love what you mentioned on the way that it really strengthens our mind. And I think there's definitely something there in regards to discipline and devotion. And the way that it ties into this is that, the movement of our bodies really supports us in being disciplined in our minds. And the discipline in our minds allows us to be devotional through our bodies and through the actions that we take. Because I feel that discipline is a mind thing. Discipline is a mind thing. It's like choosing to not do what is out of alignment, right? Like, let me build the strength of my mind to be disciplined. But the devotion aspect of it, it's of the body. It's like to really allow ourselves to move in integrity with the discipline, right? And like it really bridges our, that aligned way of being, of saying, all right, like through this devotion of my body, of my actions, I strengthen the discipline of my mind. And through the discipline of my mind, I support and embrace the devotion of my body.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And so that led to you being this artist and helping other women who maybe have felt something similar to what you have felt step more into their power. And then how did that come about? And then where did the podcast come from?
Yeah. So, man, there's so much. There's so much in there. I'm like, how can I like bring it, but as when it comes to like this journey of being empowered, I mentioned earlier, is that just going through my life, just feeling disempowered in my own way of being. And one of the things that I'll share to this is that, as I mentioned, is that I was at the time when I had this revelation about empowerment and the connection to my body and like my deep desire to serve, and just like all of these things like awakening within myself. I was in a really long committed relationship. And one of the things about it is that, although that was a big catalyst for me to go through this like big awakening, like spiritual awakening and conscious awakening, I truly believe that one of my biggest catalyst for becoming empowered was the ending and the transcendence of that marriage, of that relationship. I myself have grown up as, I mean, not openly, but it was around that time where I was able to accept to myself that I am queer, that I was, like I always, I loved women, I loved men. Like it was no specific like way. And this was something within myself that I had suppressed for a really long time. And so I did what I needed to do in order to please everyone. And maybe, for the people that are listening, and for the women that I work with, maybe it's not that they're all like queer and wanting to come out of the closet, but then it's just like being a certain way of living, like living in a certain way that's not fully supportive to the wholeness of our being. Right. So in that relationship, I had to be someone who was limiting to who I truly am, and was
Mm-hmm.
limiting to who I was meant to become.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so from that space, getting to really have the opportunity, and it was really beautiful. I love this man more than anything in this world, and I'm so grateful for the way that we were able to complete that. But as it turned into this point of, wow, I actually get to be empowered in being who I am, in being myself, and giving myself the chance to actually explore who I am in
Mm-hmm.
my life. Right. And so getting to that point, and being in a space of like, holy shit, like I don't have a place to live. I have a big dream that I don't even know where I'm going to start. And everything ahead of me is completely unknown. I was like, get to that point. It's like, okay, well, I can either be empowered in, like, well, I mean, not really. Like, I can either be disempowered in the situation and see myself as a victim of everything, or I can actually like see myself as like an empowered woman and say, all right, I made this decision, and I'm going to give myself the chance to become the woman that I'm meant to become.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that, I feel like that really ignited me into the space of actually having the space to bring myself forth.
Yeah.
Right. And the second that I at that time, I was trying to like, begin this journey of supporting other women. And the second that I made that decision to, when we separated, like literally 3 days later, a woman reached out to me and she said, I'm ready. But it was like a direct reflection of my declaration of saying, I'm ready to be this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so this whole journey came about, and I went on, and then I started like just completely leaning into like my own personal healing, and then utilizing what I've learned and what supported me, and like being able to orchestrate like containers for other women to go through it. And this whole way of being really like shaped me into who I am.
Yeah.
And how that began to tie into my desire to create a podcast. This was actually my big thing, the first ever like manifestation like ritual, that I created for myself, was like, I'm gonna have a podcast and a YouTube channel to support people in feeling better about themselves, and literally when I put that, it was just like life was like, all right, like let's have you do it for yourself first, and then we'll go ahead and create something for the world. And I kept on, waiting for permission to do this. I kept waiting for permission to do a podcast and to bring it forth. And as I sat with myself and I looked at my own journey and the things that are important to me and what I truly value in people, it really allowed me to see that, number one, I am deeply passionate about stories, about the stories that have shaped me, and the stories that have shaped other people to be who they are today.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's a really beautiful way to be empowered in our lives, when we can look back at what we've been through, what we've gone through, and say, wow, I went through all of that and now I'm here, and I have gained so much wisdom from that. Number two is I'm deeply passionate about leading, and leading in a way that's not saying I'm going to lead, but leading from a way of being. Because I didn't realize that me going on and setting myself free, coming out to my family, leaving my job, following my dreams, like as wild as they seemed, even to me, I chose them anyways. And that opened paths for other people to also feel empowered and inspired to do that. And number three is that I am deeply, deeply, deeply passionate about making change in the world, and how this change actually gets to happen by human connection.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to know people and their lives, and not just saying, look, it's 1, 2, 3, ABC, boom, boom, got it, good. Now go on and do the thing. And I feel like all of those things together, and declaring myself as an artist, I was like, I think this is it. I think this is going to be it. I'm going to make a whole art piece out of this podcast and out of this experience, in which I get to strip myself of titles completely and be a human being and sit with other human beings and have really empowering and powerful conversations that ignite and support and guide other people to do the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the cool things that you told me about the podcast is you don't do any intros.
No, it's no
So
interest.
there's no bios on people.
Right.
I mean, they can find them if they want to, but it's not like you're saying this is so-and-so and does this and this and this. It's like you show up and you talk about what the topic is, and it's just two souls coming together to collaborate in that moment. And when I heard that, I thought that was really, really cool, because a lot of times podcast hosts will seek out podcast guests who have big followings, who have really, successful titles, a lot of numbers and a lot of letters after their name. And, and that is important. It's, important to honor people in their work. Yeah. At the same time, I think those titles and those intros prevent other wisdom from individuals who can look at those titles and say, that's not me. And then they kind of shut down. But what your podcast does is it provides a space for, no matter who you are, you have a voice, and there is something in you that all of us need to hear so that we can all take and utilize in some way, which is a wisdom that my mom taught me. which is you can always learn something from someone,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's what not to do, So, uh, and
Yeah.
and I think that that's really, really cool. So I just wanted to highlight you on that and say kudos. That is definitely art form at its best and raw and unfiltered.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it. And there's the I think of so many incredible teachers that we know nothing about, and they have such potent codes
Mm-hmm.
for life. And just like you said, like I also believe that to be empowered within ourselves is also to know that there's wisdom without every single one of us. So much that everyone gets to be inspired to witness within themselves. And this aspect of even just coming into impact, right? Like talking about impact specifically, like you shared, it's like it is good to acknowledge people that have a big following because they have a big range of impact.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important and that's powerful. And also there is this aspect of getting to be empowered and really leading with the way in which everyone is welcome to express their wisdom, right? There's this quote from the Gene Keys. I love the Gene Keys. And it talks about how true guidance, the true leader is the true listener. And on it talks about how this leader, it was a story, he saw the biggest difference in the growth of his community when he allowed everyone's wisdom to come forth rather than leading with his own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really inspiring, for me, and to have this space in which you know I get to sit with such incredible beings and just kind of put the titles aside and just be like, let's have a conversation and let it be impactful.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
really beautiful.
There's a quote that I love that says, "Knowledge speaks and wisdom listens,"
Yeah.
and fits right with what you're saying.
Mhm.
There's a couple things that I want to go back to. One, the coming out part, and so there's a couple components of this. First, every day leading up to that moment
Mhm.
was a day where you weren't fully being who you wanted to be. Is
Mhm.
that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And whether someone is queer or not, I think people in at some point in their life can resonate with that.
Mhm.
And the duration obviously changes depending on the person. But let's tell me about like what was every day like knowing that that was a thought process of yours. Like, I want to say this, but I'm afraid, either I'm afraid to, or I don't want to, I don't know how to. I don't know what your thought process is, but what did it cause you to feel? Like, how were you drained every day? What cycles of thought were you thinking about? How did you treat other people because of it? How did you work, like at work? Like, how did you work because of that? Like, walk me through those deep, like those dynamics.
Ooh, all right. This is deep. This is deep for me, but
Because I know this is going to be helpful for someone
yeah.
out there who's in that similar position. And I know that you've done so much work on reflection and piecing this together, and this is the work that you do. And so I'm curious, and also I think it'll help so many people by you walking us through this.
Yeah, every day it manifested as shame, feeling ashamed of myself, feeling that I couldn't take any criticism from anyone,
Hmm.
constructive criticism. It was constantly like anything that was said to me, I would take it and I would just go on this loop of shame
Hmm.
of how, of course, I'm not enough, I'm unworthy, I'm not lovable because I have this one thing in myself that I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have these desires because my life is beautiful. I have everything that the status quo says I should have and be happy with. And so every day was this constant battle of, why can't I just be grateful for what I have? And why can't I just get rid of this aspect of myself that desires to live life in a different way? And it manifested in also so much judgment of myself and judgment of other people who were free in their like expression, in their like, I would get, I would get so frustrated when I saw people being audacious and like confident and just so free within themselves. I'd be like, oh my God, like, it was such a big trigger to me. I was like, God, like, just calm down. Like, why do you have to be so like out there and like, about yourself and who you are? It was so constricted. It was like, I literally put myself in a cage and would point fingers to anyone who was afraid of one. Right. And it was just like, I'm like a caged like jaguar, rainbow jaguar. And here I am caged and I'm judging myself because I myself put myself in here. I'm making myself wrong. I'm going to constantly just try to like overdo and please everyone and just do what I have to do to make everyone happy, to make up for this brokenness of my being. And so that's what it was like. And it was tough to live with, and then to move by that specific aspect of, I should be grateful and I should just be happy that I was able to manifest the life that my parents wanted for me, the life that society would want for me, that says that I'm a good citizen. And the challenge of that like wild woman inside of me that said, it's not that I want more, I just want different. Yeah. And so that's what it was like.
Thank you. I don't want more, I want different. That is a really good, I like that. And thank you for your courage. So all of that kept building over the years.
Yeah.
And then you have the conversation.
Yeah. It was a volcano. It was like a volcano. And then the conversation came because after my divorce, I fell in love. I fell in love with an incredible woman. And
so did you get divorced because of that? Or was there already the divorce and then you came out and shared that?
Both.
Okay.
Both. My ex-husband, he was very much aware. He was very much aware of it the whole time. He was my best friend, so he always knew this about me and always created a safe space for me, like it's all good, like you're good, and the separation just happened because the life that I wanted to live was different. And so after the divorce, I fell in love, and I got to this point where I was like, shit, I can't hide this. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful for me to keep it hidden. It was like that aspect of myself that I tried to hide and suppress would then manifested in this relationship. And it was this way of me being like, wow, this relationship and this love is so beautiful that I don't want to hide it. And how that simultaneously is a reflection of this aspect of myself is so beautiful that I don't want to hide it anymore. And so it was a beautiful way to set myself free and accept and welcome in this, like, wow, this big coming home within myself.
Mm.
And I took time, I definitely took some time to share with my family. I began by expressing with, in safe spaces with like my dear friends. And I feel like this happens for us again. So even if it's not you coming out, it's like you discover this aspect of yourself and you choose safe spaces to be vulnerable and to kind of begin stretching into this embodiment, right? And I remember like I had this like Mean Girls moment of like I didn't want to tell my friends because I was like, I love my friends, like I love them so much and they know that I love them so much. And I was like, if I tell them, they're what if they don't invite me to the pool parties anymore?
Mm-hmm.
We can't invite you anymore because you're lesbian, like all of these like
Stories.
stories playing out of my mind. And every single one of them, they were like, dude, I know, like like we know, we've always known you're like,
About time you told us. Like, we already
yeah.
knew.
They were like, dude, we've known this forever, like we're glad now, and they were like, I had another friend, she was like, dude, it's like it's 20, like, it's like
Yeah.
2019, 2018, like it's all good, like we're pretty much innovative, like we're your friends, we do things differently, it's all good. And it was just such a like, thank God,
Jeez, you probably felt like so light after that.
I was like, yay.
Damn.
And it created so much more intimacy in my relationships. I had one of my like dearest friends, and I was just like, I'm just afraid that you're not gonna like, you're not gonna want to be my friend. And she just looked at me and she was like, Paola, I love you even more now.
Yeah.
And that was just like,
Isn't it crazy how like that is, I mean, it's not crazy, but that's the threshold that one has to go through in order to find those types of deep relationships.
yeah.
Like that's the prerequisite.
Mhm.
You can't have that without being vulnerable.
Exactly.
You can't. And if you're not vulnerable, then to some degree you're always hiding.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're hiding, um, you're not fully expressing. And then you can kind of get caught in that cycle that you just described.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'm sure that there's time for everything as far as like how to tell it and who to tell it and stages and obviously all of that. But at the end of the day, the level of depth in your relationships comes from the level of depth that you're willing to explore in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the more capacity you can hold in you, the more capacity you can hold with somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what makes a beautiful relationship. So I'm so happy to hear that the friends that you chose and that chose you embodied love back to you, even and when you momentarily doubted it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool, so beautiful, and such a call to action for all of us to be able to, one, have the courage to admit where we're not in full alignment or where we're playing someone else's game or living according to someone else's societal expectations. That's the first step. And then to have the courage to actually speak that out with someone that you trust in a safe space.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I can speak from personal experience too with my wife and my friends. Like the moment you start, like the moment that first word comes out and then that turns into a sentence, and then you're like, holy shit, I'm actually doing this. It's coming out. And then they're like, yeah, I hear you. I see you. I love you. And then you're like, oh, I feel like I can fly. Thank you. And then you're like, you have this surge of energy come back to you because it's like you've been playing what ifs back and forth, if thens, and that is exhausting. And that'll drain you faster than anything else. And the crazy thing is it's all in your own head.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So wild.
Exactly. And in this that journey of coming out, it wasn't just like coming out as being queer. Like it was really a coming out of like, this is me.
Yeah.
Like a coming out of my beliefs, a coming out of, you know, just what I truly believe on, what it is that I truly value. And just like you said, it was so beautiful to initiate this process and those spaces where I could, like, you know, felt safe enough to be vulnerable. I feel that there is a level of vulnerability that exists in our fullest expression. It can feel really vulnerable to be fully expressed, you know. And as that trickled into my family, coming out to my family, it was this level of, how can I express this to my family, number one, without needing to be accepted, without needing to feel understood, and without the need to have them be anything for me in that moment, right? And having this conversation, I remember, and that took a lot of work, right? Like, allow me to fully
It's a lot of
accept
awareness.
myself. Yeah, like allow me to accept myself, to set myself free from any cages that bind me, and allow me to be that source of self-assurance that says, Paola, it's okay. You are not wrong. And to have that compassion with myself that I could extend to my family. Right. And they were all very loving. And when it came to my father, I feel like this, you know, it's important for me to share, because then there's kind of like, you know, in video games where you like, you win all the little battles, and then there's like the boss battle.
Yeah.
That like, yeah, that was my
Mario's
father.
boss.
Yeah. And it was like, you know, building the courage, building this courage within myself to then get to that boss and get to my father. And I remember sharing with him, I said, you know, I'm going to share this with you, and it's not for you to accept me. It's not for you to celebrate me. It's not for you to validate me or understand me. You don't even have to support me. I'm sharing this with you because I want to set myself free with you. And the second I told him, he was like, no, no, no. I'm not going to accept this. And he asked for me to keep it on the DL. He asked for me to never mention it to him again. He asked for me to never come around as this new embodiment of myself. And in that moment, every part of me wanted to just go into this like, why, you know, like, but I understood.
Yeah.
And he mentioned this thing that I feel that there was a divine orchestration that came through to him to say, so that I could understand where he was at. He said to me, that's the problem, Paola, freedom. And in that moment, so much came into, like, I was able to understand where he was at, and the fact that this cage that I had been in has been a generational cage. And I had finally stepped out of it.
Damn.
And I understood. I was like, I get where you're coming from, Dad. He was still in the cage. He was me pointing fingers at the person who had stepped out. And we had this beautiful conversation and I always say to him, and I was like, you know, I love our relationship because we can always agree to disagree. And at the end, he said, you know, it must have taken a lot of courage for you to share that with me.
Damn.
You know, and so it's been this unfolding.
So many layers in that conversation.
Yeah,
wow.
So many.
No cheat codes against the boss.
Yeah. No. I was like trying to like, trying to Google all the cheat codes. There was none. It was like error.
Yeah. Double tap square, triangle, circle, X, R2. No, dang it. Okay.
There was no cheat codes on this. And thank goodness.
Yeah.
Thank goodness,
Right.
because it's like this level of open, like heart openness that it required for me to be in, to hold myself in that situation, to hold him in it, and to not like go into this like restriction and contraction and like withhold love from him or myself. It was this big opening of my heart that I'm constantly in this journey of like, keep my heart open first and foremost to myself, so that I can hold this for anyone that I come into contact that might have a contradicting belief.
Yeah. So a couple things I hear there. One, I hear non-judgment and acceptance of what is. Another thing that I hear, or actually I don't, I heard it, but I want to like see if there's a specific process that you followed. How did you get to that space where you could hold that conversation and one, call it beautiful, which I don't think many people would choose that type of language to describe what you experienced there. They would either say hard, challenging, that was a very hurtful conversation. Like, there's other labels that people could slap on it, but you put beautiful there. And you were able to hold your space and his space, see how you were responding and what you were holding, and then also see his perspective at the same time. It's very meta. How were you able to get to that point? What were some of the, I know there's probably a long system, but if you can give us like 2 to 3 major strategies that you used maybe over a course of years, but what were pillars that you kept coming back to that allowed you to get to that space?
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind is breath work. It's really like, wait, what?
People sleep on breath work. I'm
People
like, come on, you don't
it.
know. You don't know about it. You must not know.
Yeah, it's, and the way, so you're like, what? Like you just went from like a really deep depth to like breath work, like all of that to talk about breath work. But the place that this comes into play is because breath work and my continuous practice of breath is that it expanded my capacity to hold without contraction, to hold energy flowing through my body, as in, emotions are energy in motion, right? Like, how many times have we heard this? And breathwork really supported me in expanding my capacity to hold a wide range of emotions without contracting and simultaneously transmuting it. And so I spent some time in India, like training and learning, the technology and the ancient technology that is breath work. It's such like you said, it's just like so many of us sleep on it. Like it's literally a medicine and a tool that like, if you're alive, you can do it.
It's free.
It's free. It's free. It's like, oh, there it is. I truly believe that in a physiological level, if we put like emotions and wisdom aside, on a physiological level, like to have that tool and to have it embedded in my body and in my nervous system really supported me in that moment of say, let me stay open. Let me stay open. And
it creates space and also and enough distance to be able to in real time measure what's happening through the breath, right?
Exactly. And there's a very subtle aspect of it that in those moments, right, can feel really vulnerable. Like it felt really vulnerable for me, for my body, right? Like it felt exposed, like I was being exposed,
Yeah. I'm sure you felt heat and like all kinds of things going on.
Everything. I felt like I was, it's just like to keep it in the sense of breath work is that I felt so exposed in that moment, and my breath actually became this like nourishing, safe nectar like within my body. So like if my body just felt like completely like just like blown open and exposed, my breath filled in those gaps
Yeah.
that allowed me to stay open. Right. And so breath work, one of them. The second one I would say is definitely, you know, going on a like personal development and like going through my own healing process, right? Like having the ability to sit with myself and observe rather than absorbing my experiences. Like in that moment I was the observer of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
There was part of me that could have absorbed it and been like, like you don't get me, this is why I am the way I am and you're the reason why, and all of these things. But in that moment I was like, okay, let me place myself from in a observatory standpoint and witness myself and witness him and witness the situation
And hold it.
and hold it.
Mm-hmm.
And meditation supported me in doing that, and my own healing, like having mentors, having coaches, like it really supported me in like having access to that satellite view
Yeah.
of life. And the a third one I would say would probably be also, which I know this is not for everybody, just like anything, right? Just like
Mm-hmm.
anything, like everybody has different things. But um working with plant medicine as well was a big catalyst for me, and
Mm-hmm.
has been a big catalyst for me, because it really allowed me to witness my father in many, deep prayers and deep meditations, of being able to see my father and his pain and his sorrows and the ways in which he held himself back. And so in that moment I could better understand
Mm-hmm.
from a range that maybe my day-to-day level of consciousness wouldn't allow me to witness.
Yeah.
And so I feel that the support of my breath, the support of awareness, meditation through support, and having that like point, right? I feel like when we have like mentors and coaches and guides, it's like they're like an access point, right? They're like, okay, well, how would they see it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like it's supportive to like be able to like tap into a
What would
perspective.
so and so do right now? Right.
Yeah, like wait, let me try and see this, like from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What would their perspective be, right? And yeah, and then the work with work with plant medicine, that I feel like is ultimately like a deep level of healing and accessing levels of my own consciousness
Right.
that can allow me to see things from a different perspective
That's
and
so beautiful.
actually heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for frameworking that. And to be on to speak on the plant medicine piece and the breath work piece. Like I've done ayahuasca many times, and
Mhm.
there's some of the most powerful experience I've ever had, like seeing myself in the future, seeing my kids, seeing Amanda, my wife, seeing my parents,
Mhm.
seeing the way the world is and how it has come to be, and visiting all the parts of myself that needed to be upgraded, right? And cleaned and polished or sharpened or just sat in.
Mhm. Mhm.
uh so potent. But there are times in those ceremonies where things speed up and
Mhm.
you're in the thick of it. And for me, the only thing that kept me grounded was breath and sound, like
Mhm.
humming.
Mhm.
And that was like in Inception, the movie, you know, like where he's like going in and out of the dream world and he has his little totem and he spins it and that's how he knows where he's at. Like the breath and the noise, the sound kept me grounded as I was exploring and seeing and viewing and expressing and crying and all those things. So breath, if those of you listening, breath work, like can't express how valuable it is, not just from a physiological standpoint and a health perspective, but from a resiliency or a non-judgmental view and approach to life. And then you attach what Paola is saying about, you know, awareness and coaching and mentoring and asking the hard questions, sitting with all that. And then you add plant medicine. That's like, geez, a trifecta of just beauty that produces a certain level of consciousness. Not everyone's going to understand that. But the beauty about you being in that place is that whatever it is, you can hold it. And that's the point. The point is not for everyone to see you and understand you. It's for you to express who you are without restriction and appreciate people where they're at. And man, if you can operate like that a majority of your day, you're winning. So yeah, that's beautiful. As we wind down here, Paola, what else is coming through that you feel you want to share with the audience based on maybe what you've been exploring recently or just thinking about in your daily thoughts?
Yeah, you know, this has been such a beautiful journey to be in, like this conversation with you. I really appreciate you. And you know, as I've been reflecting within myself, I've actually been in a very deep, like reflective space in the past few weeks. And one of the things that continuously keeps returning is this aspect of purpose and acceptance, because I feel that, you know, and maybe like those of you that are listening can relate to this, of going through this journey of self-development, of expanding our consciousness, of healing, of transformation, of having better mindsets. And I've come into this question of like, why? What's the purpose of all of this? What's my purpose in this world and in my life? And I don't think my purpose is to be an artist. I don't think my purpose is to be a teacher. I don't think my purpose is to be a guide or, you know, all of these things I've truly been anchoring into. I feel that my purpose is to live my life fully. And being an artist and being a teacher and being a guide has me feel fully alive. And acceptance in a way of that, I truly believe that the way that I've been accepting, and for a long time, a few years before, was like accepting myself as a failure or as broken. And now coming into the space of accepting myself as I am, and also accepting my gifts and accepting like the fullness of my being, you know? And so those two things have been really present for me as it relates to, you know, just the work that I do and what I'm passionate about. You know, because as I move forward in leading in a way, right, of supporting individuals and integrating the wisdom that they've gained in their life, right, into their bodies, into their embodiment. And integration is about integrity. Integration is the action and the embodiment of integrity. And in order for me to be in integrity, I get to accept myself as I am, as I've been, and as not knowing who I'll be.
Mm.
So
When I hear integrity, I think about one of the most best ways to live, because if you're always in integrity, then there's never something you have to worry about trying to be or having to say or not say, because you're just you. So you just show up everywhere you go, operating with who you already know yourself to be. And so you take away a lot of the games, right? You operate with such precision. It doesn't mean that you're ever done growing. It just means you have such a solid foundation that when storms come, you don't freak out because you're weatherproof. You know, and there's some sort of conviction and confidence that comes through when you know that about yourself. And that's when life really becomes a lot of play and fun, because you realize that there's going to be ups and downs, ebbs and flows, seasons to life, and that all seasons are beautiful and all seasons have knowledge and wisdom inside of them for you to grab onto and share, transmute, and live into. And that's what this journey of life is a great deal about, you know. And so integrity is huge. That's one of my values. So I always love when people use that. But I want to thank you and honor you for the work that you've done, for the person that you are, the person who you're becoming, and for being so real and transparent with your story, with who you are, with where you're going, what you're about, and the containers that you create for people to have conversations like this, and or just spaces for people to just be real. I mean, that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? You know? So thank you for your time. Thank you for all of that. And where can everyone find you? What's the best place?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. You can find me through Paola, Paola, Ucelo, UCELO_. You can also head over to my website, paolaucelo.com, and then on there you'll be able to, get to have better access and get to know a little bit more about me. But more than anything, find me on Instagram. And if you're listening to this and it resonates, and reach out, always greeting with open arms.
Good. And as far as the podcast, I know there's some back end stuff that you're still working out with, having it on your website, now other platforms. So when can they expect to listen to that?
Yes. So in February 22nd, it will be out on all streaming platforms, and it'll be under Passages, the podcast. And these are all deep dives into readings of passages, as well as rites of passages that visionary leaders, healers, artists, human beings have been through, and the way that it has shaped them in their life. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Paola, much love. Hope you have a fantastic day. Everybody listening, go out there and be your own 1%. See you later.